Good evening, good afternoon, Danvers, Massachusetts. My name is Mark Zubarek, and I'm here showing you the July 16th, 2020 topics of the town news. Today, we have Mark Zubarek, myself, and Matthew Duggan as co-hosts. John Toomey, currently unavailable due to being cautious, and we don't blame him. Transparency and independent reporting is our motto. The topics of the town news reporting is by Danvers producers for Danvers residents. We always report the truth based on events in our town. Sometimes we do have our own opinion included, so don't be surprised. Review of past productions. Our viewers sent me the following quote, which summarizes the sentiment of our religious community. And I'm stressing this for the second show in a row, but I think it is very, very important. The church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. It must be the guide and the critic of the state and never its tool. If the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, it will become an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority. And this is a quote by Martin Luther King, and I believe this is so appropriate at this time of our virus situation and the dictatorships that we have coming from the state and the federal government. Recent announcements. I have one today. On Sunday, July 12th, 2020, we lost Eleanor Ross. She was imminently involved in her family business and in many town activities. She was one of the residents that influenced the town government and policies. Our condolences go out to her family, especially her son, David McKenna. The one quote from the obituary that touched me was, quote, "Time is a cruel master, wearing down even the strongest oak in the forest, and eventually even the mighty mountains fall into the sea. But Ellie lived her life on her terms, standing tall, even though she was only 4'8.5" against every obstacle that fate threw in her path. Always a leader, it didn't take her long to take charge at the Lindens, making sure things were done the way she wanted them to be done, just as she did all of her life. All I can say, and I believe this is by David McKenna, St. Peter, I hope you're ready for this one. And she's off on her next adventure. This must have been written by David McKenna because that is so reflective of her situation and her presence in our political arena and in our private lives. We need to have the King Unwilling emblem back on the show. And the thing that I want to make sure is that this seal is so reflective of what this town is all about. And that this seal represents many facets of our life, especially when we're elected and appointed to the town meeting. The Constitution is a restraint on the government. It tells the government what it can or cannot do. It does not tell the people what we can or can't do. Now we start into our regular broadcast of our news items. And this week, we're going to have three segments. The first segment is a note that I've captured from the discussions at the Board of Selectmen budget hearings and the Finance Committee hearings. In a note to Selectmen, Danvers Town Manager Steve Bartha signaled more severe cuts may be needed once the town gets a clearer picture of the impact the coronavirus crisis will have on local and state funding. This is only about funding. The cuts are already coming. The residents must adjust their budgets. It appears that the town may have to do that as well. One of the things that I have noticed at the town meeting that we held, with Pat Frazier being the moderator, and she basically pushed that meeting as a public meeting in person. And one of the things that I have captured from that meeting is I had many opportunities to identify and let the town meeting know that I was not happy with the budget the way it was put together. And the Finance Committee did not do anything about it. And one of the things that really bothered me a lot is that the current fund, school building fund, which was appointed or started back in 1997, 98 by the Board of Selectmen at that time when I served. And now the fund has been changed. They changed the name. They're going to use those funds that have been put away for school buildings for anything that is a capital expense and has a bond issue with it. So I am not very happy with that. I am still going to appeal to the Board of Selectmen to have the town managers rename that fund back to the school building fund. News story number 2. Declaration of emergency and the conduct of Danvers Board of Selectmen. This is a deep subject. We have been tracked. We have been coerced. We have been gathered in our homes because the government wants us to be there. This is to stop any gatherings of people that are attending these meetings, that have attended these meetings in the past, like the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Selectmen's meeting. Current issues, Town Hall is not open. They claim that somebody's working in there, but I haven't been able to get anyone except the town clerk's office, which has responded very well. The school is also not reopening. And the thing is that the town has recently issued some kind of a guidance in regards to all the PPE that will have to be required. And I believe, and I'm not sure right now, but it's $56,000, I believe, a week for the PPE that the teachers and the administrators will need from the state to recoup those costs. The state doesn't have any money. The state already has expended all of their reserves that they have had. So,
and just trying to get that material. I mean, we saw back in March and April when even the healthcare providers, the doctors and nurses, were struggling to get the masks and the gowns. Now that situation has arisen again, where because of what's going on in the southern part of the country, with schools having to reopen, and there's going to be a huge demand that we're not going to be able to meet for that material.
that's one thing, and I think we're living through a situation that we've never experienced before, and I agree to that. But this thing is not surmountable. We need to overcome what is going on, and we need to be smart about it, and hopefully people will agree. So the next story I have, the only other thing that I like to add in regards to what happened at the town meeting, and this is regarding the budget and the warrant articles, is got, I may raised a very, I was the only one, or maybe two or three of us, raised some issues in regards to the town meeting warrant articles. And one of the articles that I raised an issue with is the school building fund. And the school building fund is no longer called a school building fund. It is debt stabilization fund, and it's really being funded for any debt that we have. And for all of a sudden, the name of the fund was changed and the purpose was changed, because what they're doing is they're spending the reserves that are included in there. It's a savings account basically for the schools, and they're spending it for every major purchase that they have done in the past. I asked that the school building fund name be reinstated, and maybe I stepped aside too soon, but I am going to ask the Board of Selectmen again to change that and get that name back to the school building fund, because the debt stabilization fund is not a true name of that. Now, the next few stories, and I've just listed a bunch of items that have been bothering a lot of the residents, and I've had communications with many of them. Town hall opening. When are we going to have access to the town offices? When are we going to be able to discuss our issues that we have with the bills and the planning and the other boards that we have in town? It seems like the only thing that I've heard was that there was a reply by the chairman of the board that don't expect it any earlier than September. So what sense does that make? I mean, they had the town meeting was open, and we accomplished what they wanted to do, but the town hall is not accessible. Matthew?
Yeah. Well, you're correct. So technically you're supposed to be able to get in if you make an appointment, but if you go on the website and you look for the numbers for any specific offices, they only list like the directors of the departments. And then if you call that number, I found that the mailbox is full. And so just trying to reach somebody to make an appointment is almost impossible. I did end up finding a mailbox, and I left a message, and then later someone called me back. And when I went to town hall, I had to wait on the front steps for the person to come down so I could hand the material to them. So I wasn't actually allowed inside. So I think the process is kind of convoluted. You should be able to get in, and it's not just me. Other people have voiced the same, same situation where they can't reach anyone and they can't get inside. So it's not really open. The doors are locked, and if you can't reach anyone to make an appointment, how are you going to get in? It's just, it's a silly situation, I think.
Well, the next item I have on the current issues here is school reopening. I have information in regards to school reopening, and I have a report here that says given the current low transmission rates of COVID-19 in the state and pursuant to emergency regulations recently passed by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are asking districts and schools to prioritize in-person instruction, Riley said. Specifically, we have asked districts to focus on assessing the feasibility of bringing back students in person, and those feasibility studies should be taking place in your districts now. But Riley also asked districts to avoid making public announcements about reopening plans until early August, just weeks before the start of the school. The reason for waiting, he said, is included possible new funding and any change in the state's COVID-19 transmission rate. So our education system is, again, dependent on state funding. So what are we doing? I mean, are we educating our students or not? Matthew?
Yeah, I'm kind of wrestling what a possible solution would be for September. So there seems to be a rush that we're going to get the children back in school, and especially the younger ones, so elementary, middle school, because they seem to have a very low rate of infection. But the challenge is for the teachers, right? So some of the teachers are older, 40s, 50s. They're not going to be willing to go in and put themselves at risk, I think. So right now, it's this past spring, it was all at home online. So maybe we need to do some kind of hybrid where students, we cut the classroom sizes in half and we do alternate days where students come in. So we do need to get this in-person schooling back on track, because otherwise we're just going to have another lost year of teaching.
That's right. And the other item that I'm really concerned about is the library reopening. Why is the library locked up and not available to our general public? Because they're asking for access so they can go and get materials. And now everything is online, and what they're doing is basically locking up the building and nothing's going on.
Yeah.
So the library needs to reopen as well.
Yeah, and it should be sort of like, you go to the supermarket and there's not really a lot of distancing going on at the supermarket. So at the library, they could just allow a few people in at a time, tell people they have to wear their masks, keep them separated. So it's not an all or nothing situation. It can manage having people come in, just keep the head count at a respectable level.
Well, the next item that I've identified on here is the senior center. That is locked up tight. They won't let anybody in except the workers that are in there. I mean, what are they doing? This is unprecedented. I also identified the municipal light board meetings. That was my favorite attendance to a meeting in town offices. And
aren't those meetings suspended still? They're not meeting, the water and sewer or the electric municipal.
Well, listen to this. When I asked the question at town meeting about the water and sewer rates, because I was very concerned about that, and they had their meetings unannounced. No public was ever advised that they were holding the meeting, and they said that they raised the rates by 5% combined, sewer and water. So these meetings are going on, but they're no longer public meetings. They're secret meetings. So one of the things that I'm very concerned about is that a lot of these organizations, these committees, and everybody else is holding their meetings, and they like it that way because there's no public input. There's nobody watching the shop.
Yep, and this could go on for months or even years. As long as there's that state of emergency, things could just be public access could be suspended indefinitely.
Well, we'll get to the state of emergency because that's another issue that I have, and you and I have talked about that. But the one thing that really struck me as being very interesting is tax collections and bills are going out because they want the tax revenue from us to support the functions of whoever is in town hall, who's ever working in the DPW, and whoever is working on the safety organizations, fire and police. Fire and police have always been very good about things, but what are we doing about the rest of the town? The town hall is basically loaded with management staff that I don't know what they're doing. Lack of transparency and access to press. That's another thing. Everything you read in the papers or that's comes out as news is basically planted by the town hall. The town hall has a policy that no one will speak to the press unless it's released through the town manager's office. That's ridiculous. Legislative actions, police control bill, mandatory masks, police state government, town enforcement. What are we doing? Recently, we have been hearing in regards to the legislative actions that the House of Representatives and the Senate in Boston have issued new bills in regards to control of the police department. Why are we impacting the police department? Our police department is accredited, and it's been accredited for many, many years, and they have done an excellent job. The state wants to involve themselves in town, police departments. Get out of our way. Let the town handle the police. This is our police department. Now, lack of interest by residents and no input to the governing boards. We'll get to that in a moment because that's a subject that's very dear and near to your heart, Matthew. And
correct.
And what?
That's correct.
That's correct is right. Town manager's declaration of emergency and the conduct of public meetings. They're using the governor's edict that he's issued back in March, and the town manager rubber stamped the same issue to the townspeople that everything the governor says goes. The town appointed committees and boards. Why are they reluctant to conduct business in a public setting? Why are board meetings inconsistent in their setting and access to the general public? Public is concerned as to the favoritism of these committees. These committees are dysfunctional and enjoy anonymity on television. No input allowed or never read into the record. So, Matthew, you have your concerns in regard to several of these boards. I have one with the Board of Selectmen. Every time you watch their meeting, it's so mumbled and so, unintelligible that they might as well not have those meetings. Matthew.
Yeah, there's definitely a problem with the audio. But I have to give credit to the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Selectmen for making the effort to actually meet in person and allow the public to attend the meetings. At least they're making that effort. There's other boards and committees and commissions that are not doing that the public is only allowed to submit emailed questions, or they can call a number and talk to an intermediary. Meanwhile, the applicants or the guests of these boards and committees have unfettered access to have a real communication or a real conversation like we're having right now. So the public is being shut out of the process. It's no longer a democratic process. It's more of an autocratic where the committee rules, and I think it's based on an interpretation by town council. They read the order of modification of the open meeting law, and they've determined that the public doesn't need to or doesn't have the right to have the ability to join these Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings and have be part of the conversation. So I think it's a disservice. I'm surprised that there isn't more outrage from the public about this situation.
It seems like the public is basically acclimated to the situation and they don't care. But listen, this is just the beginning of what they're trying to do. They're trying to suppress the access to general public comments because they don't want to hear them. They like it the way it is now.
Oh yeah, and the applicants are having a field day with some of these developments and other projects that are being that need to be signed off by the town. They don't, there's no there's nobody. Yeah, there's nobody that's confronting them and making them explain what they're trying to do. So, I think down the road maybe the public will realize what a mistake it was to allow this situation to exist. Because again, it could be for months or even even into next year. We don't know the duration, and so we need to address it right here and now.
The one thing that very much concerns me is that Municipal Light Board and the Water and Sewer Board, basically those meetings are held without any announcement or posting of the meetings that are supposed to be on the bulletin board in Town Hall at least. Now they don't even post them on the internet. Yeah. So that's been going on for the last 3 months, I believe.
I noticed the bulletin board was installed outside the east side of the town hall along the side there, but there's nothing inside it. I think that was maybe that's an effort to actually post the public meetings, but there's nothing inside that device. So
right.
Maybe it's a work in progress.
It's a motion that they feel like it's illegitimate holding these meetings, and they do have to post the meetings so people from the general public know that these meetings are being held. And it's illegal what they're doing. The problem is that nobody's challenging them because even the courts and the Attorney General and the superior courts in this state are shut down for the convenience of the government, because the government can do whatever they want, and they haven't even opened up the courthouses. Now even the prisoners are complaining because they're being held in jail for length of time without a judge, bail. Yeah, without bail, right?
That's a constitutional issue, right? The right to a fair and speedy trial.
Absolutely, and that's one piece. But there's also filings that have been made in regard to stop the governor from doing what he's doing to the Superior Court, and none of it has been heard because it's just languished in the paperwork that's being passed by electronically back and forth, and they don't know what to do with it. And the judges are asleep at home.
Yeah, they're on vacation. Everyone's on vacation.
Well, we've been on vacation for too long. This needs to change. and we need to recapture our civil liberties and constitutional freedoms. Why do we need 1,000 trackers to report on the COVID-19 infections to track our citizens for the government or for our governor? Why are we hiring these people? The thing is, because they can, because nobody's challenging it. All house confinements, and I had to change my words here because I have been criticized for using all house arrests, and quarantines are imposed by the governor and town manager as voluntary, and we are voluntarily obedient to our elected dictators who are asking us that we abandon our liberties and religious commitment. We are dedicated to stay in hiding in our bunkers without means of earning a living and feeding our families. We are held hostage in our own homes with no end in sight. This is the fallacy of what's going on. We don't know what their plans are. They don't have any limits on their dictates and directives. We are now being threatened with legislative actions by the State House to legislate the wearing of masks. That was issued, I guess, earlier this week. This legalization will commit us to wear the mask as a symbol of submission to our elected officials and will include a $100 fine for not complying. When have we become a dictatorship? This is the legislative action that's being taken by our elected officials who have been asleep at the switch over the last 3 months, 4 months, but they can get a police reform bill. They can get a mask wearing bill because they're looking for funds. They're going to charge us $100 everywhere we go so they can replenish the tax revenue that has been lost. Matthew, you have anything on this?
Yeah, I'm just wondering who's going to enforce that.
Well, the police is going to be disbanded. Our police, I hope not. But many of the cities disbanding their police departments. What they're talking about is hiring health inspectors. This is the brown shirts that are coming in. They're going to impose this on us. The state is also passing laws regarding how we control our police and actions on their part. The immunity that our officers, nurses, and other municipal employees enjoy will be eliminated. How can they do their job and be liable for their assigned activities? Their jobs are now defined as essential. So now you're making me cough here because this is hard to swallow. And the thing is that the legislators that we have elected and sent to the State House are having a field day with this. This is more control and more mini dictators in the State House. Matthew, what about the police? What do you think about that one?
You're talking about the defunding of the police?
No, the reform that's in this legislation that they have just passed in the Senate in Massachusetts.
Well, I'm not really that familiar with it, but I do think that there is opportunity for some modification about the role of the police in society. So, for example, when you have some type of a non-violent situation, do you really need to have, a half a dozen police officers show up to kind of do what is essentially social work? And also, some of the police unions protect rogue police officers that may have this reoccurring issue with inappropriate behavior towards the public. So I think there is room for an opportunity for some reform. I'm just, from what I hear, some of it seems to be a little bit overboard in terms of the scope.
Well, the initial passing of this bill eliminated their immunity from litigation because they were protected, just like the selectmen are protected in our town. They don't, they can't get sued. The town has to pay for that. And the police are also protected. But the legislators in the State House are also protected. They didn't remove that.
Yeah.
And the governor's protected. So if they fail, nobody can sue them. But they are going to be suing the police department. Our department in Danvers, and I remember back in the 90s and 2000s, has been accredited for years. They go through a reaccreditation every few years, and they pass that because they have certain criteria that they have to abide by. And they have been doing a wonderful job. We have not had any issues with our police department because they are trained and they are guided properly. So
yeah, I think you can say that about most police departments, where the overwhelming majority of police officers are professional and strive to do the right thing. But, like in any profession, you have members who are kind of outside they operate outside the norms. And so they're protected under some of the union laws that are in place. So I think, again, there's an opportunity for maybe some changes, but I think overall it's especially here in Danvers and in Massachusetts in general, very rarely do you hear about police officers that are kind of rogue, so to speak.
Our officers in this town, and I bet you it's probably up to 80%, are college educated. They pass through an academy. They are paid very well, I believe, and they have the Quinn Bill. That's $25,000 a year per officer that the town pays because the state has abandoned that payment, and now it's a payment that the town makes. But they deserve it. They need to be protected from litigation because they have a job that none of us want. And we need to be protected. What do you do when you get attacked by someone or somebody breaks into your home? The first thing you do is call the cops. And they are there all the time. And as a matter of fact, the last few days, I've been going up and down 62, and there's a detail over there of 3 police officers. They were digging some pipes up and doing some tree trimming. And you wave to them, you know them. They're local. And they have been very good in our estimation. Now, the one question I have on here is we have to ask why our jobs are not essential, but our elected and appointed government elites are essential. The elected officials will continue enjoying immunity. Where are our elected leaders? Right now, there's nobody speaking up against this immunity that has been proposed, and it probably will pass. What are they running scared of? Why don't they impose the accreditations that have been implemented in our town, in other towns? And they have in some respect. I inquired, and this being a Topics of the Town news reporter, and I have the credentials for that, I inquired about the legality of any actions taken by the town manager in support of the illegal and unconstitutional actions by our government. No response from my invitation. They like it that way. Press is banned from town hall. The only time there's anything released in regard to news or announcements is by the town hall, the town manager. And that thing has to stop because we have well qualified police chief, fire chief, DPW director, and we have a senior director, senior center director. We have had those people on our show interviewed and discussed what their operations are and how they function so people can get informed. But no, they don't want us to touch that because town hall is upset with us because we tell the truth. Court actions are also delayed or in collusion with the legislators. All legal cases are not being heard because our courts are also in their bunkers. How convenient. This is what we just talked about. Even the prisoners are complaining. The town has a moratorium on information to our residents. Nothing gets reported unless it is planted by the town manager to the papers and other media. So they don't, I guess they don't trust us. This is a big government attacking our constitutional rights. These constitutional rights have been eroded for many years under several administrations. It accelerated with 9/11 and the Patriot Act. And now we are all becoming sheep going to slaughter. This is going to become another federal and state act that will limit our possibility of living in a free society. And my closing statement on that has been always, socialism is going on in front of our eyes. Matthew, what do you think about socialism? Do you like it? Because I've experienced it as a kid.
I'm not really that familiar with it, but I think I don't see it as socialism. It's more authoritarianism, where
Dictatorship.
I'm sorry?
Dictatorship.
Well, you have just a few people making the decisions, and the public is just kind of following along as a docile kind of, sheep. They're just sheeple. So.
Sheeple? Yeah, I like that term. Well, my next item on here, and maybe some kind of a recognition of the sheeple status, we need to organize a demonstration at Town Hall and demand our rights from our elected officials. We have had demonstrations at the governor's mansion in Swampscott with limited results. The police, nurses, and other municipal employees are afraid to show their hand, but we are residents and taxpayers. We are able and must stand our ground and demand an end to this police state. And I'm speaking from historical experience, past experience, and current experience. This is becoming a police state, and they are using our corporations, our stores, our municipal activities as enforcement of being masked. For one thing, being masked is a symbol of submission. Now, I know that many people don't feel that way because they feel that they can transmit something to somebody else, but that's not true. We have been living with this kind of virus, whether it's called coronavirus or it's called a flu virus or China virus or Spanish flu, for years. So what's the difference? The difference is that they want to control us. Let's stand up for our God-given rights and demand an end to this hypocrisy and future police state. We need to rise up and demand our liberties back again because we are being crushed. And the thing is, maybe what we need to do, and I don't know about you, Matthew, but I'm willing to stand up and organize a demonstration at Town Hall because Town Hall is asleep. They're vacant. And one of the things that David can show right now is a picture that I've used over and over again. And it's a picture of Town Hall closed. And that's exactly what we have. We have a vacancy that continues. Selectmen and selectwomen asleep and hiding in their bunkers. Lack of leadership and direction to the community. When the elected officials and the town managers stand up for the rights of individuals and the residents? We are paying the bills. We are being asked to authorize them spending money. So right now, what we have is a few minutes, and I'd like to just discuss our, we have one more show that's scheduled for July 30th. And that will be the last show for the summer. And we will reconvene in September, and I believe it's September. I will get that date because we just talked about it. It'll be September 10th, I believe. September 10th will be our next show, but by then, things should have changed. And we need to mobilize and...
Probably not. It'll still be the same. It'll still be the same.
No, it cannot be the same because we are getting lulled into submission.
No, it'll still be the same in September as it is right now.
Well, I hope they decide on what the heck to do with the schools because that is the important piece right now because our kids are getting left behind for the last 6 months. What are we doing? Education has stopped. So the next show will be July 30th, and then we'll be absent or missing in August. But the Board of Selectmen has a meeting on August 4th. So I don't know what will come out of that, but we will monitor that information. And if we need to have a show in August, we'll see if we can schedule one. But right now, that's not the plan. The town hall, like you saw in the picture, is shuttered with no activity. Where are the employees? Who is in charge of the town? Where are the selectmen and selectwomen? They are settled comfortably in their bunkers, protected by the governor's actions. When will the dictatorship stop? That's my final line. And I believe wholeheartedly that this is not good for the town, it's not good for the state, it's not good for the country. And the thing is, we need to change that. Matthew, you have some final comments because we're coming to a close, and we'll discuss future shows for July 30th. We already talked about it, but any closing comments in regard to what we discussed today?
Sure. So you're right, I think, about the government kind of just being shut down. And I don't know if they're using this climate as an excuse to be able to just kind of operate behind closed doors without much, not accountability, but without much, public openness. Right? So they may be transparency. So they operate in a way that the public only learns about decisions after the fact, which, it harkens back to an earlier time where that's the way governments operated, and that's how the open meeting statute came about, was because of decisions being made behind closed doors that benefited a few to the detriment of the many. So we see that today, where the public, for example, there's these meetings that in the past have taken place where the public had the opportunity, especially when they were defined as public hearings, the public could speak up, could stand up and speak to the issues and have dialogue. And now that's been shut down. The public, there's this governor's emergency declaration that has been, I think, taken out of context by our town at least. The town council has made a determination and said, this is the way that I think is what is the governor has meant, and I don't think that that's accurate. So no one seems to challenge that perspective, and so we have these committees and boards that are meeting remotely, and the public is shut out of it, and it's kind of an affront to the democratic process. I don't know why more people aren't complaining about the status quo, because I don't know if they're just kind of going along with it because they don't know any better, but it's very frustrating to me to see. For me personally, when I stand up and speak about this situation, I feel like I'm just being a curmudgeon, and I don't feel like I'm being taken seriously. That people say, well, that's just the way it is now, and we have to just tolerate it. It's not acceptable. It's actually offensive to me.
We do not have to tolerate, but you're sounding like a voice in the wilderness. And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of people. And you're one of the few that is not afraid to stand up and say things. There are people who are threatened by this whole situation, and they're afraid of their own personal existence, because intimidation happens all the time. And the problem is that we are allowing it to happen.
Yeah. So can I just say one more thing? So just to paraphrase Ben Franklin, who, he said, people that are willing to give up a little bit of liberty for some safety don't deserve liberty or safety. And that's kind of what we've done. We've given up a bit of our freedom in order to get this false sense of security. And I think it's just it's a misplaced trust that we're giving to our elected officials.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're getting the government that we voted for, the government that doesn't give a damn about individuals. They just care about their own existence and their own status in life. Now, I have another 5 minutes, and let me just read one small paragraph that I have started writing, and this is something I'm planning to put into the letter to the editor and see if they will publish it, because they are very reluctant. The newspapers are basically dead at the switch too. They are publishing on Mondays. They're publishing horoscopes and Dear Abby on the electronic version, and there's nothing on Saturday. So the only thing that they publish is the advertising that they have in the local papers, and nobody buys them anymore. So let me just, and I may have just shot myself in the foot, but that's okay. Government attacks our freedoms with town government colluding. The opening statement here is, I am so tired of the media using the phrase, we are in this together. That is such a tired phrase. We are not together. The government has asked us to break family ties, group gatherings, and social person-to-person contact. The media, with the help of our health experts, have frightened our children, friends, and relatives to a point of fear of catching the virus and killing our parents and grandparents. The governor banned large group gatherings for the fear of an uprising or a rebellion to the edicts. The state's Supreme Court recently made gun shops as an essential function of our community. They have basically, the governor wanted to stop selling guns, and that's not true. The state government knows that it is in danger of an uprising. There is more to this story coming. Excuse me a second. We have not asked for this epidemic, and we do not want the elites to run our lives. We need personal freedoms, and let it be our responsibility for our health and businesses. The government needs to get out of the way and stop being our protector. We will not die from this virus, but we are in danger of being left to die by neglect. We need to recapture our family unit and take care of our elderly at our nursing home depositories. And I call them depositories because they're basically prison cells for the elderly. Our elderly are at risk and must be taken care of. By not being sent to our rooms by the regulations of our socialist government, the government needs to reform their activities to governing, refocus their activities to governing, and not on terrorizing our population. Need to have the government protect the population instead of dictating social engineered rules and regulations. And don't you think that this is social engineering by the big government? This is an opportunity that they could not resist. However, I still believe, and I've said this before, this is a biological attack by our enemies, and we do not know how to react to it. This is against the world. It's not just Danvers. It's not just Massachusetts. It's the whole world. So we need to figure out how to protect ourselves in the future, because biological attacks are easily spread, and we saw that just now. Matthew?
Yeah, so we do know how to respond. It's this is not something that's new. This has been going on for thousands of years with these pandemics, and people know how to respond to it, but it's the execution, right? So our government leaders are failing us in denying that it's even a problem in some cases, and we're left to fend for ourselves. I think it just illustrates the fact that if we are dependent on the federal government to protect us from any type of calamity, we're in tough shape. We're really kind of always on our own, and we really need to accept that fact.
But you see, this time the government saw the opportunity that the elected officials, the protectors, have selected this opportunity to do their damage to our freedoms and liberties. And they are continuing it, and we are allowing them to do that.
Exactly. So, we are allowing them. We're just sheeple. We're just sitting back and accepting whatever is dictated to us without any dissent.
No pushback, no reaction. They just, it's too comfortable to be at home all this time. The problem is that we are comfortable in that position, but our life has changed drastically, and our children's life has changed drastically, and it will change more, because this is draconian type of measures, and the governor needs to stop, because the president has basically delegated all this authority to the governors, and the governors are loving it because they are in charge. So the thing is that we need to stop this. And that's one thing I want to address quickly, is maybe if there are enough people that are interested in going to town hall on the 30th of July, and bringing a sign that says, we demand our freedoms back, open up the town hall, open up the state, open up this bureaucracy, because it is over and over again being too restrictive, and we need to get back to our real lives. So I want to thank you for participating with me, and I know that sometimes this is a sermon on the mound, but we have issues with our, like I said in the beginning, our churches have abandoned us, and our government is impacting us, and there's no pushback at all. We need to stop this. Matthew?
Yeah, I'm just feel like I'm stuck in limbo here. So I think it is gonna have a negative impact on our children. It's kind of like a new normal. Who knows how much longer this situation is gonna exist? Maybe this is just how we live the rest of our lives.
It's going to exist as long as we allow it to exist. The problem is that the legislators in the State House and the governor are using this power to do whatever they want. And they can find time to do the bidding for the police and for the masks, but they can't figure out how to get out of this mess. We are signed off. Good night, Danvers.